that fertile, fecund space between the stars in our collective heart, by Reverend William Levwood. In this church, nearly every Sunday, we recite words from Reverend David Bumbaugh, lifting up that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. In spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. That space between the stars is a dark space. It is a dark space, but it is not an empty space. Not exactly. It is a place of possibility. Behind all our differences, yes. Beneath all our diversity, yes. But not in spite of that diversity, no. Not in spite of our differences. Rather, the unity that makes us one and binds us together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars is a fertile place. Old stars die and new stars are born in that darkness. Our differences ripple and sparkle and burn in the fertile soil of that darkness. That darkness between the stars. That darkness deep within the cave of our collective heart is a fertile, fecund place where our differences dance together. Dance and drum and sing together. That darkness is a canvas where we paint our differences into a harmonious whole that is better for our having differences. That we paint onto tiles and then arrange into a mosaic of community made manifest. That darkness is a garden ever in the making, where a diversity of life flourishes because of difference. Because some plants make shade for others who are shy of direct light. Because some trees house birds and their birdlings and their bird song. Because milkweed calls the butterflies. Because asters and goldenrod with their vibrant purple and gold made more eye-catching through the contrast, call forth more pollinators together than they ever could in isolation. Because of their differences, so stark, so bold, so harmonious. Not a complementary harmony, not a harmony of sameness, a harmony of contrast, a harmony of differences. Like the three sisters, we need our differences. The corn growing tall and straight, scaffolding for the beans to twine and wind around. The beans raining nitrogen into the soil, which the corn and squash feed gratefully upon. And the squash, the protectors with strong woolly tendrils guarding the perimeter of 100 interlocking circles. We need our differences. We celebrate our differences. This is what binds us together as one. And not time, nor death, nor any amount of distance can separate us from this oneness, this togetherness, this vitality, harmony of differences. And so we grow together. Those 100 interlocking circles growing in depth and strength, in vitality and in width. Widening the circle, we let in, we invite in more and more difference. Widening the circle, we live more deeply, ever more deeply into this truth that we are caught up in an inextricable web of mutuality. We know that we ignore this truth at our peril, that diversity is life, uniformity a death that is barren. So may our legacy be one of a togetherness, a oneness that invites more and more diversity, that continuously widens the circle of care and concern until that circle, that powerful, robust, liberating circle, frees us from all of our hatred, greed, and ignorance, binds us all together in a wise, compassionate, caring, and just love. May it be so, and may we be among those who make it so.
This morning, on the day before Valentine's Day, I want to talk about how we can connect, truly and authentically connect with each other. Because the ability to authentically connect with each other is foundational to our ability to love. And that's true whether we're talking about romantic love, the love of friends, the love of neighbors, the respectful love that we have for all of our fellow human beings, even those that are just acquaintances or who we don't know at all. Too often, though, there are things that get in the way of our connecting authentically, of truly seeing each other. In our story for all ages, there was that wall. And the wall was a barrier to connection with what was on the other side of the wall. In that story and pictures, the wall first reveals a blue sky with clouds. And then when the wall is completely removed, it's revealed that the wall has hidden two groups of people from contact, from connection with each other. Now, in the story, we clearly see the wall, but often in our human relations, we don't necessarily see it. And when we don't see it, we don't know that we need to remove the wall brick by brick. If you'll imagine a different image with me, it's as if the wall has a landscape painting on it. It's a painting of the blue sky with the gentle white clouds and the bright sunshine filling the space, so that we don't know that we need to remove the bricks. And yet we sense that the blue isn't really alive with sunlight, that the clouds never darken to give the life-giving gift of rain, that the sunshine is providing us no warmth or sustenance for the hungry foliage. There are these walls between us, walls that tell us that all lives matter, walls that tell us that we're living in a post-racial age. There is a wall that makes us not notice the privileges of whiteness, not notice how we still privilege maleness and heterosexuality, how the world is made for tall people, not for short people, for thin people, not for fat people, more for walking people than for wheelchairing people. The title of this sermon is, what does it take to truly connect? And I want to suggest first, we have to see the wall. Because only then can we start removing it brick by brick. And until we start removing that wall brick by brick, we cannot truly be in authentic relationship with each other. The writer, Hanif Abdurraqib, illustrates this in an essay and from his own cultural context. He writes, "It is a strange thing to grow up poor or in any interpretation of the hood and be in very close proximity to the suburbs. A short walk or bike ride away from a world that seems entirely unlike your own. A dream that you could be snatched from at any moment. As a curious kid, always fascinated by the idea of escape, I would sometimes meet my friends and ride my bike. We would ride our bikes to the edge of our neighborhood, into the blocks where the houses were taller, the sidewalks more even underneath our bike tires, and the silence was a gift to a group of reckless and noisy boys spilling in from a place where everything rattled with the bass kicking out of someone's car trunk. We would ride our bikes, our dirty and torn jeans, and look at the manicured lawns and grand entrances and the playgrounds with no broken glass stretched across the landscape. During the day in summer, we were just kids. Black, sure, but not particularly threatening or dangerous to all the other kids who were, like us, trying to find a way to kill time while their parents were at work and school was out. And then, with the sun setting on another hot day, we would ride back a few blocks to our neighborhood's familiar skin, the language we knew, the songs we could rap along to, and the comfort that comes with not standing out. When I say it is a strange thing to live in close proximity to a world so vastly different than your own, I mean that it creates a longing within the imagination. You long for a place that you know only by its snapshots and not by the lives moving within them. It allowed me to fantasize, imagine a world where everyone was happy and no one ever hurt. This is a description of the wall. We gaze at snapshots and think we really understand the experiences of others. And then we're either repelled by or attracted to those snapshots. As a youth, Abdurraqib develops friendships with some of these suburban youth. And as he relates in the essay, he learns that everyone wasn't happy. That, like the REM song, everybody hurts. And later in the essay and in other essays, he writes about white kids seeking out Black spaces with the same curiosity he experienced on those childhood bike rides through the neighboring suburbs, with the same imagination of a different kind of freedom, a different kind of peace, based on an imagination informed by grainy snapshots or now bright Instagram posts. Either way, the snapshots not telling the full story. In fact, in their incompleteness, the snapshots might even do more harm than good, giving us the impression that we understand a world that is vastly different from our own. The illusion of understanding, attracting or repelling us. If you interpret your imaginings of this other world negatively, you'll want to move away. You'll see it as less than. If you interpret the imaginings of this other world positively, you'll want to move towards it, seeing it as something greater than and desirable. But either way, you aren't seeing clearly. The snapshots and your sense that they give you an understanding of this world that is actually vastly different from your own impede your ability to connect authentically. I used to listen to rap music, to Black rap music, and feel resonance, feel like I understood what was being expressed, that I was connected to the narrator through a kind of neutral, common humanity. But I've realized that this isn't true, or at least it's not the whole truth. When I listen to Common, a popular and rather accessible rapper for white audiences, a rapper who has performed movie soundtrack songs at the White House, I now realize that I'm looking in through a window at a much different experience of life than the one I've inhabited. In contrast, when I listen to Brother Ali, a white Muslim rapper who raps about being a white anti-racist, I feel that he is narrating my reality, that he's presenting me a mirror of my own life rather than a window into another experience. The point I'm making, or at least trying to make, is that there is a wall, first of all, and second of all, that we often don't see that wall, that we often think we're all the same. and that we try to connect by eliding our differences, by smushing them together. But first, we need to acknowledge that the wall exists. And then we need to truly see the wall. The wall can be a wall of culture or of race, of different sexualities or different understandings of what gender is or isn't. It can be differences in socioeconomic class. It can be our socialization into manhood or womanhood. Now, some of these identities come with privilege. Abdur-Rakib writes in that same essay, where you live and grow up in America has very real implications, and that isn't to be ignored. What I think he means is that it is a privilege to live and grow up in the suburbs. Acknowledging this doesn't take away the pain that comes from living a human life. We can acknowledge the privilege while also acknowledging, as Abdur-Rakib does in his essay, that there are particular kinds of pain that are endemic and unique to the suburbs. We can acknowledge this while acknowledging that a suburban life is also markedly safer, that it comes with more accessibility to healthy food and better housing, even better access to good sleep. As recent studies chronicled in multiple articles over the past decades have shown, with Black Americans twice as likely as white Americans to get less sleep than their body needs. Today, however, I'm focusing less on the systemic effects of inequality and more on the ways these differences and all kinds of differences can separate us from each other, on how those differences can make it harder for us to connect authentically, and thus make it hard for us to love and support each other, as we covenant to do in our third UU principle, pledging acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. We lift up our commitment to welcoming people of all different walks of life, different cultural backgrounds, different theological beliefs and races and genders and sexualities and abilities. We lift this commitment up in our welcoming words at the beginning of service every Sunday, and we should. But I think we also have to admit how difficult it is to actually live into those promises. Regardless of whether you inhabit a privileged identity or a marginalized one, and most of us, let's be honest, inhabit some of both. These differences can be walls that inhibit us from truly connecting with each other, from truly seeing and being seen, from engaging in authentic relationship together. The journey to spiritual wholeness, to connecting with each other in authentic relationship begins, I'll say it again, by seeing the wall. And almost always privilege hides the wall. You don't notice the way the world is designed for tall people when you're not tall. I mean, when you are tall. You can easily reach the food displayed at the grocery store. Your feet rest comfortably on the ground when you sit in a chair, rather than hanging awkwardly. Now, almost always, as the amens show, inhabiting a marginalized identity reveals the wall, right? You notice your feet are hanging off. You notice when your teachers speak differently than you do at home, that they never say on today or on tomorrow. Perhaps they even correct you when you say or write that way, even though on Tuesday is perfectly correct. You know who holds the power if you try to flip the script. If you're white, just imagine being told at school or on your job that you should be saying on today or on tomorrow. That your normal way of speaking is incorrect, improper, less than. It seems ridiculous. It certainly has never, ever, ever happened to me. Ever. Not even as a child, when I was literally still learning how to use language, and there was plenty I didn't know. The wall is hidden when you have privilege. Your ways of being are the default, the norm, so you don't notice them. Unless or until you are around people with different norms. Maybe then you start to notice. But the wall is revealed when you inhabit a marginalized identity. You know it's there. As I said before, when your feet are awkwardly hanging off the chair, when you always need a small stool to rest them on. This phenomenon is explored within something known as standpoint theory or standpoint epistemology. Now, feminist standpoint theory posits that a person in a marginalized or oppressed position in a relationship has a better understanding of the full reality than the person in a privileged position. So let me break that down. In other words, the short person is more likely to notice both the shortcomings. Sorry, I couldn't resist. The short person is more likely to notice both how often their feet can't rest on the ground when they sit in a chair and how often taller people's feet rest comfortably on the ground. While the taller person whose feet are resting comfortably on the ground when sitting in a chair probably isn't noticing, isn't as likely to notice the other person's discomfort. That's feminist standpoint theory in a nutshell. So next I want to ask us, for the sake of empathy and for the sake of understanding people who are in a marginalized identity, I want us to bring to mind a shared experience of marginalization. And lucky for us, as Unitarian Universalists, as a religious minority, it's not hard for us to do this. How many times have you been in spaces where prayer or a belief in God has been taken for granted? Why do we have to work to develop elevator speeches to quickly explain our faith to others? It's because other people don't know anything about us. More than that, the very way that we organize ourselves as a faith is so far outside the norm, so far, that we have to define and redefine multiple terms before we can even begin to authentically connect with someone from a different religious perspective, especially if that person is Christian, because Christians, like tall people, are acclimated to being the norm. And they often don't even know what they don't know. They don't even know what they don't know about us. They can't even see the wall. They might even leave a conversation thinking they've connected deeply with us, while we leave the same conversation feeling completely unseen and misunderstood. So inhabit that experience for a moment, and then widen your circle and realize how often that is happening when we're trying to connect with each other across our multiple identities. I'm not saying we can't bridge these divides. In fact, our story for all ages in visual form shows us how to do it. It begins, as I've said, by seeing the wall that divides us from other, a wall that is always harder to see when we're inhabiting a privileged identity. And then once we see it, we can start to remove the wall brick by brick, turning the wall into a window. And then we can use the bricks, the very bricks, the very differences that were dividing us, hiding us from each other, keeping us from truly seeing each other. We can use those bricks to build a bridge to each other. We can use our differences to better see, better understand, and better connect with one another. Now, you might still be wondering why I'm delivering this sermon on the day before Valentine's Day. It's possible you could even be annoyed and feel like it's just another sermon about racism and oppression, and haven't we heard enough about that? You might be longing for a message about something else, like spiritual growth or community. But I implore you not to lose the forest for the trees. This is a sermon to draw our attention to racism and other oppressions, to help us live into the commitment that you made when you unanimously voted to adopt the eighth principle of Unitarian Universalism, committing to accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. But this is also a sermon about all the ways that we can put up walls between ourselves and others, and all the ways that we can build bridges, right? The illustrative example is an example for all those ways. So in fact, this is a sermon about spiritual growth, and this is a sermon about community, because the walls between us are legion. And learning to see those walls, learning to remove them brick by brick so they become windows, learning to build a bridge brick by brick, using the very same bricks that divided us before to better connect with each other. That is spiritual growth. That's spiritual growth that builds community. And this is what it takes to truly connect. To truly connect across all kinds of differences. Begin by seeing the wall, commit to dismantling it brick by brick, and then use those same bricks to build a bridge, working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. That's quoting the eighth principle again, by the way. So may it be so. And may we be among those who continue the practice of making it more so each and every day.